Huh? What do you mean? I made new sheets. Well, why did you ask for me yesterday? Come on, man. There were. I don't know if there still are, but there might be. There might not be. I don't know. Anyways, we're on, I think. I think we're on. I think we finally made it onto the web, the World Wide Web. People, they used to call it that, World Wide Web. No, they used to call it the World Wide Web. That's what www is. Thank you. I just educated you. You really didn't know that? www stands for World Wide Web. Yes, good. Well, we're on the World Wide Web, and we're about to begin the class today, which we are on Rosh Hashanah, the tractate Rosh Hashanah in the Talmud, page 26a. That's what we're going to be discussing over here. As I reminded you, the rabbis and Rabbi Yossi have a massive dispute whether you can use the horns of a cow to use for the shofar on Rosh Hashanah or not. The Gemara tries to analyze why on earth would these rabbis argue. Do rabbis ever argue? Depends. They argue very often. It is actually quite common that rabbis argue. There's a saying that if there's two Jews, there's three opinions. I say, well, that's only if they're regular Jews. If they're rabbis, there's a way more than three opinions. Two rabbis? Come on, there's got to be 5, 10, 15 different opinions. Come on, man. Yeah, don't limit two rabbis to only having three opinions, right? Anyways, the Gemara is going to try to analyze the reasoning behind this argument, whether you could use a cow's horn or not. Okay? You ever blew a cow's horn? I have, okay? A cow's horn, it looks, it sounds, it's pretty much the same as a regular shofar, not very different. You probably couldn't tell the difference between the sound of a cow's horn and the sound of a ram's horn shofar. It's kind of like a banana, but like a little bigger than a banana, Yeah. Anyways, so if you remember yesterday, we had Rabbi Yossi. We had the Gemara basically made this technical analysis based on biblical verses and the wording of those said biblical verses. Okay, that was the first opinion in the Gemara to try to resolve the argument. So first we have an argument, and then we have an argument on how to resolve the argument. Not to resolve, but how to analyze the reasoning behind the argument. So first we have an argument, and then we say, let's try to analyze the reason behind the argument, and then we have an argument on that too. Okay, so we have an argument on how to analyze the argument. So the first opinion on how to analyze the argument is basically a technical biblical concept, and as I told you in the past, we've gone through this in last lesson, and so I'm not going to bother trying to teach the same biblical analysis, especially for those that are here. You need to read the biblical analysis in the words on the paper. That's why you have your worksheets over here, so that you can go through each word in the biblical analysis and show how these, there's a way of looking at these biblical verses as determining that you cannot use a cow's horn. I'm not going to go into that. The second opinion as to why you can't use a cow's horn, he says, Ein kategor nase sanegor. A prosecutor cannot become the defendant, which means that whatever's out there to punish you cannot save you from that said punishment. Right? Make sense? Good. That is the rule of Ein kategor nase sanegor. Okay? What was the reason, or what was the great sin that the Jewish people needed to get forgiveness from? The Chet HaEgel. The Chet HaEgel was the golden calf, and the golden calf was, of course, a cow, and therefore we should not be blowing the horn of a cow in order to try to get atonement for the Jewish people when the cow itself is a representation of one of our greatest sins, or if not the greatest sin of the Jewish nation. Huh? But we're blowing on Rosh Hashanah to awaken godliness, to awaken ourselves to godliness. The fact is that the horn of a cow represents something extremely negative for the Jewish people. Right? Yes. I do want to point out something very interesting, is that if you look at all the religions that I know of, at least, right? When they speak about their founders are perfect. They don't make any mistakes. And if you look at Judaism, if you look at the founders of Judaism, every single biblical character makes a mistake. At least the main ones, the early ones, maybe the later ones not. But Abraham made mistakes. Yitzchak made mistakes. Yaakov, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they all made mistakes. Moses made a mistake. Aaron made a mistake. What's that? There was a few mistakes that he made. Yeah. Huh?
But he wasn't wrong when he stole the Bukhars from Esau.
He stole what?
He did with trickery.
He bought it.
Bukhar. No, but when
Could
he
be it was
stole
trickery. Put it this way: there are mentions of things that are considered as mistakes by every single one of the major biblical characters, and including, by the way, including the Jewish nation. Right? And this is what I always ask people, if you were going to make up a religion, why would you make up that the founders of the religion made horrible mistakes? Why would you do that? The answer is you wouldn't. And that's why it's not a made-up religion. This is a true religion because it's the truth, because no one would make it up to try to tell you that you made a mistake. The truth is that all humans make mistakes, including the founders of Judaism. And therefore, the Bible wants to record these mistakes. Why? Because it wants you to properly learn from these mistakes. You must learn from your mistakes. Don't ignore your mistakes. Learn from your mistakes. Okay? And this is actually a very important lesson that you learn from Judaism in general, is that don't ignore your problems, solve them. Okay? Unfortunately, a lot of people out there want to ignore all their problems. They want to think that they're perfect. You dare suggest that somebody made a mistake, they get all defensive. You know why they get defensive? Because they, in their heart, believe that if they have one mistake, they're just this horribly worthless piece of garbage, right? They have to be perfect, right? And by the way, in some faiths, that's the way their founders were just these super perfect individuals, right? And therefore, if they want to feel about themselves that they are actually something of worth, they can't have any fault. And if they have any fault, they need to defend themselves to try to argue why they have zero fault. And in Judaism, you know what we teach you? We teach you that you have to realize that you do have faults and you have to fix them. By the way, in some religions, they say, yeah, we have faults, but everybody has faults, and we just got to live with those faults, and we have somebody who died for our sins that now he fixed all our faults, right? That's what some people say. And I'm not saying a particular religion, I'm saying a particular group within a religion, because there's a group of people that's their focus. I've heard this theology. This theological argument is try your best, you're going to make mistakes, and just... it's just too bad. You're just going to make mistakes, and this something is going to atone for your mistakes, died for your sins, or whatever it is. In Judaism, we say no. You have to realize that you're going to make mistakes, and when you make mistakes, you must try to correct them. What's that?
So why try it?
What's that?
He's going to atone for it anyway. Why try to not make mistakes?
Well, because the point is to correct the mistakes. The point. What's that?
For that, what's the point of trying? You atone for all your mistakes anyway.
You have to ask them. I'm not going to argue for their theology.
It sounds kind of ridiculous.
I obviously think that sounds ridiculous, because otherwise I would have accepted that way of thinking, right? Good.
Sounds easy.
Good. The fact is, what do we actually have a good point here from what is it? Jonathan Bain. By the way, anybody out there, if you want to join and be part of this discussion, you are welcome. All you have to do is put a comment under the video, whether it's in YouTube, you just put a comment, Facebook, you put a comment, Kick, Twitch, whichever platform you're using. If you put a comment, it's going to come up on this computer, and if it's something worthy of mentioning, I would. Did he say something good? What do you say?
Yeah, decent.
What did he say? He said, good point about ignoring problems causing hell. That is the foundational problem with education.
I agree with that.
Their math is more false than truth.
I have no idea what the second part of the statement was.
I don't know what that means. The math is more false than truth.
The first part of it was good though.
Either or, the fact is unfortunately, you have to realize that you as a human being, you will make mistakes, and you're meant to correct those mistakes. You're meant to try your best not to make the mistakes to begin with, Okay, and that's we are a work in progress. I actually want to share with you. I don't want to get too offhand, but I want to share with you that I once, for a while, I was doing spiritual life coaching. I still do it every once in a while. If somebody really thinks that they need like a perfect boost in their life, right? Then they could come to me and we can try to change your whole brains to actually being a successful human being with spiritual coaching. But when I was doing the spiritual coaching, I met with a psychiatrist, like casually, and we were discussing. I was discussing my theories and how I do it, etc. And I told the psychiatrist, I says, "What do you do when you make mistakes?" I said, at the end of the day, even if you are researched and you're using the best tactics, sometimes you make a mistake with somebody. Well, how do you deal with that? And the psychiatrist looked me straight in the eye and he says, "You know what they call our business? You know what they call my business?" He's talking about himself. "You know what they call our business? They call it a practice." We're always practicing, meaning the doctor practices, the psychiatrist practices, it's practice, that's it. Anyways, you get the point? So how did we get this? Oh, we're going back to the shofar. Why can't you use a cow's horn to blow the shofar? Is because it reminds God of this horrible sin that the Jewish people did, the sin of the golden calf. That is what Rav Ula says. Now I want to tell you a little bit about Talmudic, how should I say it? How does it work? It's methodology.
Algorithm?
The algorithm of Talmud, the Talmudic algorithm, okay? When a rabbi comes up and says, this is the reason for a particular thing, what the Gamara very often does is it challenges that and says, is it the reason? Is that a legitimate precedence as a reason? And then the Gemara is going to analyze that exact precedence and to try to figure out whether it's the reason or not. Okay? So the fact that Ula says that the reason we don't use a cow's horn is because the prosecutor cannot become the defendant, which means something that reminds God of the sin you don't use to try to atone for sin. He's essentially saying that is a Talmudic rule, right? Now the Gemara is going to try to challenge that Talmudic rule by bringing other Talmudic rules that seem to reject that precedence. This is very common, and you have to understand, a few guys tried to learn ahead yesterday, and they had trouble with this, right? But you need to understand that the Gemara is now going on to a completely different discussion. Forget about the discussion about the horn. Now we're going into discussion whether this is a legitimate argument or not. Whether the concept of ein kategor, nasa sanegor, is a legitimate argument or an illegitimate argument. And how are we going to try to take that apart by bringing other rules that seem to, conflict with that rule. Okay? So we're going to start with a list. We're going to go one after the next and try to bring conflicts to that rule and see if that actually breaks this pattern. Right? Where are we? Veloy. And the Gemara asks the question, and not? Right? That is the question. The question is, and not? Right? Welcome to Talmudic questioning. And not is a question. And not? So you have to realize that he says a prosecutor cannot become a defendant. The Gemara is saying, and not? Meaning he cannot become a defendant? Are you suggesting that this is a rule that a prosecutor cannot become the defendant? So now the Gemara is going to challenge that by saying, V'ho iko dam par, there's the blood of the bull, okay, on the altar. Throughout the temple, they would always bring blood of a bull to try to atone for sins. Okay, as a matter of fact, on Yom Kippur itself, they even bring the blood of the bull all the way into the Holy of Holies. Right? So you're telling me I could bring the blood of the bull, but I can't use the horns of the bull? That seems to conflict. Meaning, if the cow represents the sins of the Jewish people, how could we bring the blood of the bull? And you're telling me we can't use the horns of a bull, right? So that's basically the Gemara's questions. You're telling me that this rule, a prosecutor cannot become a defendant, but we have the blood of the bull. The blood of the bull clearly is from a cow. So the Gemara answers that right away, which means rejects this argument by saying, Hoyul v'ishtani ishtani. Since it changed, which means blood does not look like a cow. It doesn't even look like a part of a cow. It looks like blood. Now, blood could be from anything, right? As a matter of fact, interestingly enough, the horns of a cow are pretty identifiable as the horns of a cow. It's very interesting that animals, almost every species that has horns has unique horns. Their horns are unique to their species. Their species have the horns, other species doesn't have the horns. Right?
Sorry?
Could you tell me two animals that have identical horns? Meaning two different species of animals that have identical horns. Anybody online, by the way, you could put on? Anybody have what's that? Goats and lambs do not have. No, the goats and rams have very different horns. Their horns are very different. I could tell the difference. Yeah. What two species of animals have the same horns? Yeah. Jews and cows. Jews have cows' horns?
And rams.
I thought we had Jew horns.
Yeah, they look the same.
And we're not supposed to.
They're not meant to know.
They're not meant to know about this. Okay, this is online. You're telling them that Jews have horns? Come on, this is a secret. Shh.
Come on, man.
Shh. Don't tell anybody our secret. Why do people think Jews have horns?
It says Karen.
Huh?
It said Moshe came down with the light. It says Karen.
So the truth is, it's really Michelangelo's fault. Michelangelo, he read in the Torah where it says Moses had these horns of light. Now the fact is, horns could also mean like beams. We do have sometimes in ancient Hebrew where a horn can mean a beam. So you could argue that Moses had beams of light, not horns, but it was horns of light. So Michelangelo, when he painted some big painting on a ceiling, I forgot what it's. The who? The Sistine Chapel. You see, we have some educated Jews over here, unlike me. Never made it to college. Horrible. Look what it's done to me. Right? Now I'm teaching the people that went to college. Right? If only the people, instead of going to college, they'd come to yeshiva first, and they'll save a lot of money. Yeshiva, even though sometimes we charge a little bit, but not as much as college. Right? What, somebody asked you for $70,000 a year for over here? No one asked you for $70,000. I think Rabbi Pasternak would be embarrassed to ask you for $70,000. No, nowhere near it. No, well, first of all, over here, and by the way, in college, it's $70,000 just tuition, right? Then you have to pay on the side for your board. Here, we give you everything. You want to come to yeshiva, by the way? Any of you out there, you want to come to yeshiva in Sfas? Get a hold of us. We'll organize it to come to yeshiva. We'll make room for you. In yeshiva, we basically give you everything. We give you a place to sleep. We give you food. And you learn everything. And then you become part of the yeshiva environment. And you actually can watch me in person instead of watching me over this machine that you're watching me on. All right? Where did we go? I forgot. We got lost. The Jewish horns? No, but shh. That's why we wear the yarmulke. We need to cover the horns, right? Anyways, by the way, for those of you out there, it's actually not the case. We don't have Jewish horns. But, don't tell people that either. They might think you're lying. All right. Huh? He's not a fan of Einstein? All right. I didn't learn much from Einstein either. That's it. Okay, where are we? Okay, so we're going back to the situation. The Gemara is trying to disqualify the precedents that ain't kateger nice a neger, that's something that represents you negatively. Yeah. Good. Anyways, so we said about the blood of the cow, and we say no, a blood of the cow changes. It doesn't look like a cow. Now we go and we say further. What about the aron, the ark? The ark, and on top of the ark there was this kind of crown on top of the ark, and then there was the kruv, the cherubim. the cherubim that had these wings, and the entire ark, and the cherubim, and this thing around the ark, these were all made of gold. Right? Now, what was the calf made out of? Gold. The calf was made out of gold. It was a golden calf. How could it be? If you're telling me that something that represents the sin of the golden calf should not be used for atonement, how on earth did the Jewish people have gold in the Holy of Holies? Huh?
That's God's business.
What?
That's God's business. God told us how to make it.
God, that's God's business, right? Yes, but if that is, you're right. God is the one that told us to make the ark and to make the cherubim. However, the very fact that God told us to make that out of gold, maybe that proves that there's no issue with representing ourselves with gold in front of God.
The only reason there's gold in the world was created for the basement.
The only reason gold exists was for the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. That's what you think?
Yeah.
Where did you come up with that?
I think I've seen it.
You've seen it where? You don't remember. Okay, good. I've actually seen it too, but we won't get into that.
Oh, where do you
I don't remember. Good. If you're talking, maybe come into the screen. People maybe want to see your face if you want. Anyways, let's go. Okay, so again, gold represents the golden calf, or could represent the golden calf. Why is it that the Jewish people have in the Holy of Holies, in the temple, why do we have gold? So the Gemara answers this as well. It says, "Choite bal yakriv ko amrinon." The sinner should not come with something that represents him, that represents his sin. Okay, the ark did not represent the person. The ark represented God. The ark was a representation of God dwelling in this world, in between the cherubim, right? So the ark was actually something representing godliness, and the people. But the people should not come with gold. As a matter of fact, we know that the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, would not enter the Holy of Holies with gold on him. They were not allowed to. When he entered the Holy of Holies, he didn't have gold on him, right? So he himself should not have. When the sinner is approaching God, he should not approach God with something that represents his sin, right? Now, if you look carefully, this is actually something that I've discussed in the past, which is called the scientific method. Okay, for those of you out here, I have a previous video that says it, but I'll say it again because most of you probably didn't watch all my videos, right? You should, by the way, but you should watch it twice. The shorts you should watch twice. The long ones, don't try to watch them twice. You'll go nuts. Somebody once asked me, do I think that the Talmud is based on the scientific method? You know what I told them? I said, no. I think the scientific method is based on the Talmud's method. And there's actually truth to that. Historically, there's truth to that the people that came up with the scientific method were people that studied Bible, and they were people that seemingly studied the Talmud. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because the scientific method works the same way that we see the Talmud work. Somebody throws out what we would call in science a hypothesis or hypothesis. Okay? You throw out a suggestion. And then once you throw out a suggestion, everybody tries to attack your suggestion and try to disprove that said suggestion. Right? Now, if it holds up to critique, then it becomes somewhat established. And if it fails to hold up to critique, it is not established. We saved a seat for you, my friend Niran. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Here. All right.
What does halal mean in the Rashi?
The Rashi,
Yeah, Hadam lo yakribenu halal.
halal is like tavir. Yeah. Anyways, let's go back to what we're saying. There's a hypothesis, and then we attack the hypothesis, then we resolve that attack, and then we attack it again, right? It's almost like you ever, in the ring, sometimes they have these guys that are super strong, and they say, I'm going to beat 5 guys in a row, right? So the first guy comes in, and he gets beat, and then the second guy comes in, and he gets beat, right? You have to knock each one down. That's a little bit like what the Gemara is doing over here. All right, welcome, Dirtball comes in right away, next level. That's it. next level. Whenever Dirtball arrives, we're like, that's it. This class is happening. Where are we? I'm confused. What do you think these guys? You think these guys they're now trying to think, what did I just come here for? All right, we got to give them some information over here from the Talmud. Okay? Again, the hypothesis is that a sinner should not approach God with a symbol of his sin. Okay? And the cow's horn is seemingly a symbol of the sin of the golden calf. We threw that out. We tried to throw that out with the fact that we say in the temple we always bought cow's blood. But then we said, yeah, but blood doesn't look like a cow anymore. It changed. It changed its formation. Right? It no longer looks like a cow anymore when it's a blood, because the blood of a cow doesn't look that much different than the blood of anything else. Unlike a horn, where a horn of a cow is identified as a horn of a cow. Yes.
Would we bring burnt offerings or we burn the whole cow?
Correct. Yeah. But again, that's not inside. That's not really coming for atonement. Meaning the actual atonement is the blood. The blood is the atonement, right? And good. So then we go and we say, well, what about the golden ark? The golden ark seems to be something. What? I got what?
You gotta close the door.
Oh, close the bathroom door over there. Thank you. All right. The ark is made out of gold, which could represent the golden calf. So the Gemara. So again, let me explain to you guys. There's the hypothesis, and then there's the rejection of the hypothesis. It's very important in the Gemara because each time we bring a rejection to the hypothesis, and then we neutralize the rejection, we very often learn another detail of the rule. Okay? Which also, by the way, very often in the scientific theory, you make an hypothesis, and then there's a challenge to the hypothesis, and then the hypothesis doesn't get completely thrown out, but partially gets thrown out, and it gets refined until we reach the truth. And that's exactly what the Talmud is doing right over here, right now. We're refining the truth. Okay? So we said that the sinner, the person themselves that sinned, should not approach God for atonement with something symbolic of the sin, meaning that the fact that the golden ark was in the Holy of Holies, well, that was representing God. However, the person going into the Holy of Holies should not bring any gold, because the gold would be representing the golden calf, and that would be a problem. Okay? That's the way we now deal with it. Now the Gemara says, "V'ha'ika kafu machto." Yeah.
So they are bringing gold.
They are bringing. There is the spoon. The spoon and what's the other thing? The machta. It's like a pan. When the high priest went into the Holy of Holies in the temple, when he went to the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur, he would bring with him incense. That was the main offering, was incense. They would bring some type of a ground up.
Terrace?
Yeah, keteris is incense, and they would burn it in the Holy of Holies, and this would make smoke and make a smell and all that stuff. Yeah.
That wasn't atonement though.
What's that?
That wasn't for atonement.
That was part for atonement. It was on Yom Kippur. It was there for atonement. What do you think?
That was Reach L'Chayach.
Huh?
That says Reach L'Chayach L'Hashem for the Keteris.
It does say that?
I think so. I don't know.
First of all, that might be the regular keteris. I'm not sure. Anyways, the point is that the high priest is coming on Yom Kippur, and he's bringing this incense. Now, when he brought these incense, there was this pan that this incense would burn inside, and that pan was made out of gold. And if that pan was made out of gold, you just told me before that the sinner should not approach God with something symbolic of his sin. Here's the high priest in the holy temple approaching the Holy of Holies, holding a pan made out of gold, which seemingly represents the sin. And the fact that he did that seemingly disproves the entire hypothesis that that a sinner should not approach God with a symbol of his sin. Yeah? So once again, we tried to overthrow, and we failed to overthrow it. We actually tried to overthrow this rule. As of now, it is overthrown. The Gemara now has to try to debunk this particular challenge, or perhaps, I wouldn't say debunk, maybe reorganize the hypothesis. So the Gemara, in fact, reorganizes the hypothesis, and it says, "Choyte bal yisnoa ko amrinon." The sinner should not pride himself with, or should not promote himself with a reminder of the sin. What does that mean? That the person himself, for example, the high priest, when he went into the Holy of Holies, he did not wear anything of gold, because gold would remind God of the golden calf. But why didn't he wear it? He didn't wear the thing of gold.
Make himself more beautiful.
Why?
They make himself more beautiful. They can make himself more
Because
beautiful.
the garment is trying to show off him. Right? Now don't try to show yourself off with something symbolic of your sin. Right? And the same thing when we're coming to blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. What is the point of blowing the shofar on Rosh Hashanah?
To cry out to God.
To crown God as our king. We're trying to show God we're crowning you as our king. Do it! Right? And we should not use something that's symbolic of our greatest sin. That doesn't make any sense. Right? So again, we reorganize the hypothesis. As we have it now, the hypothesis goes as follows. A person themselves should not try to self-promote themselves towards God with something symbolic of their sin. That's the new hypothesis. Now the Gamara, the Talmud, is going to try to challenge that very rejection. Right? How we're going to try to challenge that rejection? You have a question. Lehit kashet means kind of to adorn yourself. It's like, like you put on jewelry or you're trying to adorn yourself. You're trying to beautify yourself, right? Don't try to beautify yourself when you're approaching God with something with something that's symbolic of your sin. Yeah. Yeah. So now the Gemara is going to even challenge that again. Look at we have I think 3 or 4 challenges, one right after another, to this hypothesis. But hold on a second. The high priest, in fact, does wear gold garments outside of the Holy of Holies. He's still approaching God. He's still serving God. Since he's serving God, why is he wearing golden garments when that the golden garments are actually there to adorn and beautify the high priests? Why is he wearing golden garments if they'll remind God or if they're symbolic of the golden calf? So that seemingly, even though earlier we're talking about the Holy of Holies, right? Earlier we're talking about the Holy of Holies. Huh?
No, but what would so the Kohen Gadol would be basically
The high priest, yeah.
would be outside with golden garments. Adim Kippur.
All of the services of the high priests. All the services of the high priests were done with golden garments, except once a year when he went into the Holy of Holies. So the question is, you're telling me, yeah, you're right. On Yom Kippur, inside the Holy of Holies, he doesn't go with gold. But outside of the Holy of Holies, he does go with gold. Yeah? By the way, I see some interesting comments. We will, Bezrat Hashem, get to it when we get to, we have to kind of keep up with the topic. And Bezrat Hashem, I want to tell you that anybody online or anybody in the class, once we're finished the topic, you can ask any question you want and we'll deal with it. Bezrat Hashem, if it's relevant in any way to me or what we do here in Yeshiva, we will respond. The simple way for you to be part of this class live is for you to put it in the comments. If you're in Facebook and your YouTube, whatever you are, just put in the comments, and that's kind of directly talking to us. It comes up on our computer screen. Thanks for commenting. We have we have Jonathan Bain, we have Mr. Atheist, we have everybody. Can I know how to? Yeah.
Wait, so the argument is here is that since the Kohen Gadol wears gold outside and he's serving Hashem, why doesn't he just wear gold inside?
No, we're not asking why doesn't he wear. We're trying to establish a flat rule: do not wear gold because it reminds God of the golden calf. Right? Here we're saying, hold on. Even though in the Holy of Holies he doesn't go with gold, but the rest of the time he does go with gold. Therefore, your rule seemingly doesn't exist. We're overthrowing the hypothesis. Now the Gemara says, "Bifnim ko amrinon." Yeah, bifnim ko amrinon. He says, no. When we tell you do not wear gold to beautify yourself because it's reminding you of the sin, that's only when you're going into the Holy of Holies. Right? What's the problem with that destruction of that, or that reorganization of the hypothesis? The reorganization of the hypothesis is that when you go into the Holy of Holies, you should not wear something that represents your sins. Right? What's wrong with that part of the hypothesis? What's wrong with that reorganization of the hypothesis? Anybody here? Come on, we got some Talmudic scholars over here. What?
It doesn't explain the whole thing with the shofar.
Thank you. We have our David over here with his brilliance. Got to the point straight. The whole reason we came up with this hypothesis was because of blowing the shofar. Where do we blow the shofar? Outside of the Holy of Holies. We don't blow the shofar in the Holy of Holies. There's actually no part of the service where we blow the shofar in the Holy of Holies. It wasn't part of the service in the Holy of Holies. The shofar is always blown outside of the Holy of Holies. Right? Now, the whole hypothesis only came up to explain to us why we don't use a cow's horn to blow the shofar. Right? So then you kind of, you were defending your hypothesis, but while you're defending your hypothesis, you basically defended it out of the real reason that you made the hypothesis to begin with. How does that work? Doesn't work?
So you just disproved that hypothesis. The original hypothesis.
Seemingly, you yourself, basically, you refined the hypothesis out of the reason you made the hypothesis to begin with. You understand? You refined it away from what the whole point that you made the hypothesis. The whole point you made the hypothesis for shofar. Now you're telling me we're only talking about the Holy of Holies, but the Holy of Holies we don't blow the shofar. Right? And that's what the Gemara comes back here now. He says,
What is
Bifnim? Bifnim is inside, which is talking about the Holy of Holies. Right? So now the Gemara says, shofar nami bibachutzu. The shofar is also blown outside. Right? So why is this? Why would you suggest this rule applies to this? So the Gemara says, Kivan de. Since the whole point of the shofar, what's the whole point of the shofar? Is to remind God about our righteousness and about our holiness and about our what would you call it? Our merits, right? There's other words I'm trying to come up with. Anybody going to help me over here? All you college graduates, what was that? What was all that worth? You know, huh? Merit. We want to remind God of our merits, of our righteousness. Now, if we want to remind God of our righteousness, says the Gemara, if you're coming directly to God and saying, God, remember my righteousness, he says, the Gemara says that is like we're going into the Holy of Holies, and therefore, specifically when it comes to the shofar, we have to be extra careful not to remind God of our sins. We have to be extra careful not to remind God of our sins when we're blowing the shofar, and therefore we cannot blow the shofar with a bull's horn because it reminds God of the golden calf.
But all this is a hypothesis that this might be what the Rabbi is arguing about.
What do you mean? No, we originally came up with an hypothesis to say never use something that's symbolic of your sin. And then we said, hold on a second, we see plenty of precedents when we do use things that are symbolic of the sin, and we go through each one and say, you know what, this is only in the Holy of Holies. You know what, this is only if you're carrying it. Then we said, no, it's not if you're carrying it, if you're actually wearing it to beautify yourself. Right? And then we say, but hold on a second, if you're only talking about the Holy of Holies and to beautify yourself, what about the shofar? It's neither. It's not in the Holy Holy, and it's not beautifying yourself. And then the Gemara answers, because you're actually approaching God, asking Him to remember your righteousness and your holiness, therefore, it's almost as if you're going into the Holy of Holies, and therefore you have to be extra careful not to wear or not to use something symbolic of your sin on Rosh Hashanah when you're trying to show God, you should bless us for a happy, healthy, holy new year. We shouldn't be using something that reminds God also of the golden calf. So that's why we shouldn't use the horn of a cow. Yeah.
Who's blowing the shofar not wearing gold robes?
What's that?
Does the person who's blowing the shofar not wear gold robes also?
What's that?
The person who blows the shofar
Yeah.
to remind God of this, are they wearing gold robes or not?
That's a good question. I don't think that they're obligated to wear gold robes. I don't think that they're obligated.
Can Gadol blow the shofar?
Huh?
Can Gadol blow the shofar?
I guess he could. I don't see why he can't. But here we're talking about, again, we said that the Kohen Gadol could wear gold outside of the Holy of Holies. The shofar, the reason why we can't use a cow's horn for the shofar is because the horn itself, that's what we're blowing with. It's not about the person blowing the horn. It's about the horn that we're blowing with. Right? Yeah? Good?
What is
Yeah.
Dil Zikaron?
The Zikaron is a reminder. It's a reminder.
This guy wants us
All
to-
right.
This guy wants us to be naked the entire.
What's that?
This guy wants us to be naked the whole time.
He wants what?
He wants us all to be naked the entire time in the service.
Let him go to a beach and watch them over there. They have in America, they have a lot of these nude beaches. You go there, no clothes allowed, right? What could I do? Huh? Put it this way: in our yeshiva, we're after the sin of the tree of knowledge, right? Some people they have no knowledge at all, so that's why they don't wear clothes. So, we already have knowledge. These people dumb, naked, the whole time. Yeah, they have the whole. What's it called? There's a whole culture of nudism. They go running around nude. They think it's cool, right? You have to remember that the Torah says that. Why did they start wearing clothes? Is because they started knowing something. They had a little bit of brains. Before they had some brains, before they knew anything, then they walked around naked. Some people, they're like, forget about our brains, that's it. No more brains. Zell. Anyways, that's a joke. It's not personal offense, Mr. Whoever you are. Who was it?
The great.
The great. He's great. Somehow he's so great, but he doesn't want to wear clothes. I don't know what's wrong. Where are we? V'hotana. So again, we basically defended the hypothesis completely. The hypothesis is completely. The hypothesis is completely. How should I say it? Qualified. We requalified the hypothesis, right? And again, the hypothesis is that the shofar is something unique because it's trying to remind God of our righteousness, and that's why we cannot use a cow's horn.
No, but you're making
Yeah.
a point, Rabbi. He's saying like the gold pan is to symbolize the
Yeah.
He's saying clothes could be symbolizing the chet of the tree. Because now we're covering ourselves.
Oh, is that what he was saying?
That's what he's saying.
Oh, so he actually had some smart comments. Why are you making that? These guys, I said, why you see you
I was
misread
I was summarizing the
We have to
comment.
fire you. We have to dirtball. We have to give him to read the comments because he's actually giving good comments.
It's a summary of the comment.
Yeah, you saw. You tell me the guy wants us to go naked. He's explaining that. They say, oh, it's part of what we're saying, right? Maybe we should go naked not to remind God of the sin.
Point. Is that
Yeah.
a similar idea?
That what? That we should go naked?
No, not that we're showing that we're covering ourselves is like it's like showing. That
First of all, you have to realize that after the sin of the tree of knowledge, God actually gave them clothing. Yeah.
like drop like heavenly clothing.
No, it says in the Torah, it says he gave them clothing. He gave Adam and Eve clothing. So, and by the way, the tree of knowledge, why is it called the tree of knowledge? Because
Knowledge of evil
there was
and good.
some innocence that existed in the world where at that point the people were basically natural. Natural means that we had natural instincts. God gave us instincts and we just followed our instincts and everything would be perfect. As a matter of fact, I ask you as follows. If you put a big juicy red steak in front of a hungry lion, could the hungry lion choose not to eat it?
No.
You say no. Anybody else? You say he could? I don't think so. If it was really hungry, I don't think you could train it good enough that it won't try to eat that meat. You think you could? Go for it. Huh?
Inflict a massive amount of pain every time
Ah,
you
you
plop
think?
a steak down on the animal.
Yeah.
Do that over and over and over.
So he's saying
and
it-
over and over again.
yeah.
It's so traumatized that it's not going to touch the steak.
It won't touch the steak?
No, if it's
All
still
right.
hungry. then
All right,
I-
you say maybe it is.
Someone who doesn't want to give a gift.
Okay, but the point is, you need a human to train. In the natural world, you cannot train an animal. In a natural world, you cannot train an animal not to eat when it's hungry.
Can make an argument to this?
Sorry, in the natural world, meaning you could train it, but you need a human with brains, with knowledge, in order to train it. You have to have an idea, a concept, in order to train the animal.
I disagree. I think that eventually
disagree.
It goes into its instincts.
What?
The lion.
No, but he's saying is if you beat it, meaning, but who's beating it?
No, it doesn't matter how
There's
much
no
you beat it.
natural, I'm saying there's no natural phenomenon that would get a hungry lion to stop eating. But blah, 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 blah. Stop hacking a Chinik. We need to stick with the point. The point that I'm trying to say is as follows. The point I'm trying to say is as follows. before the tree of knowledge, we were somewhat natural. We had instincts that led us to do exactly what we were meant to do, and we weren't able to do what we're not meant to do. The tree of knowledge gave us the ability to choose things that could actually enhance our lives significantly or destroy our lives significantly. Okay? The human race, we do both of those things right now. We do things that are extremely beneficial to humanity, things that we naturally wouldn't do. We're only doing them because we realize with our brains we discovered something, we invented something, and then we unfortunately do the exact opposite as well. We're able to destroy ourselves with things that, with our brains as well, right? But the fact is that once we did eat from the tree of knowledge, we have to use our brains, because if we don't use our brains, you'll say, okay, so we'll run around naked. Yeah, we'll run around naked, but there won't be family life. Everybody, who knows what's going to be going on if everybody runs around naked, right? Because once we have brains, we have the brains. The whole point of wearing clothes is to protect us from doing things that we shouldn't, from respecting each other, from properly treating each other properly. The clothes actually represent something. Because we have brains, now we need to have clothes. If we didn't have brains, we don't need to have clothes. But once we have brains, we need to have clothes, right? And that's why it's not a concept of going naked to kind of not remind God of the tree of knowledge, because at the end of the day, we have knowledge and therefore we need to wear clothes. But with regard to the golden calf, there's no reason, like so what? You know, there's no reason to wear it. Anyways, I want to finish this off, and then we're going to go to questions. We're trying to go a little bit too much already. Okay? Now, the Gemara stops challenging the actual hypothesis, but now challenge that this hypothesis is relevant to our discussion. Okay, remember, the hypothesis is do not wear something that reminds God of your sins. That was the hypothesis, and it was applied to the fact that we don't use a cow's horn to blow the shofar. That's how it was applied. Now, it was applied to give an argument for the reason of the argument in the Mishnah, right? Remember, the Gemara is having an argument on how to interpret the argument of the Mishnah, right? Now, the Gemara is now going to attack that by saying, V'ha tana mipnei shu keren. The Mishnah clearly says the reason you cannot use a cow's horn is because it's called a keren. It didn't say because ein kateger nasa saneger. So if the Mishnah actually gave the reason, how could you now tell me that it's a different reason than the Mishnah itself says? How can you do that?
Oh, was not the first question the Gemara had? Oh, was not the first question the Gemara had?
What's that?
Oh, was not the first question the Gemara had? I go through all this, but it's like, what do you do? Which already said a statement.
Well, first of all, he came out and made an hypothesis. So when you're making an hypothesis, let's first attack the hypothesis and see if the hypothesis is true. Once we figured out that the hypothesis cannot be overthrown, now we're going to attack how the hypothesis was applied to this particular situation. And we're saying that in this particular situation, the hypothesis seems that it is misapplied. Right? Good. Yeah? Yeah, good. So the Gemara answers as follows. He says, Chada v'oid ka'amar. So he's saying that Ula's saying the reason why we don't use a cow's horn is, yes, it's because it's called a keren and because of the first explanation of the argument. But there's another reason. So Ula, we misunderstood Ula to begin with. We thought Ula was arguing on how to interpret the argument. Comes now and we say, no, Ula's not arguing with the other person, okay? This is so Jewish, by the way, I can't even tell you, right? First we think that people are arguing, then we figure out they weren't arguing to begin with. That's exactly what the Gemara is trying to say. We originally thought that these two perspectives were arguing with each other. That's what we originally thought. But, says the Talmud, no. Ula's saying, no, there's really two reasons we don't use a ram's horn. Yes, there's the technical biblical reason that you told us about. But there's an additional reason why not to use the ram's horn, right? And the interesting thing is that it's very important that we realize this. Because in the Mishnah, we had an argument between the rabbis and Rabbi Yossi. The rabbis and Rabbi Yossi had an argument on how to interpret a biblical rule, right? Good, they had an argument on biblical rule. comes Ula and say, forget about the biblical rule, there's another reason why not to do it, right? Which is not mentioned in the Mishnah. In other words, even if you want to suggest that Rabbi Yossi is in fact a legitimate opinion, he's a legitimate opinion perhaps halachically, that you're allowed to use a bull's horn, right? According to Rabbi Yossi. However, even if you're biblically allowed, you shouldn't do it because of Ein Kateger Nasasaneg. Right? You understand? So now Ula becomes something completely different, which in other words, he's saying a completely separate thing. He's saying even if you want to accept that you're halachically permitted to use a bull's horn, you shouldn't because it's reminding God of the sin of the golden calf. Right? Good?
How did you get that from this line? What does Chadam mean?
Chad is like one, it's almost like first. It's almost like first of all, right, or number one, right?
One and the other. And then it's like,
Number one is that there's a biblical thing, and also the oid, and also there's this second thing. All right. With that, we're going to end the official Talmudic part of this class. Right? And we'll open up the floor to questions. Anybody that wants in the class could ask questions. Out of the class, it doesn't have to be on the topic. It could be on the topic. It doesn't have to be on the topic. And if you just put your question into the comments of the video, whichever platform you're on, it'll come up on our screen, and we might answer the question if we feel that it's something we can deal with. So give it a shot. Go right away and do that. And by the way, before you ask the question, I want to tell you that just before this class, on YouTube, I had 994 subscribers. And once you hit 1,000, it's like a big deal on YouTube. So whoever's not subscribed now, you have to do it right away. You can be number 1,000 subscriber. This is a big deal. If you subscribe right now, you might actually be my 1,000 subscribers. Right? And even if you're past 1,000, and even if we are past or under 1,000, and you're not the 1,000th subscriber, you'll at least get to know every time we put up a video. So please do it. And by the way, you should share this program, share it with other people, so we can get more people involved, etc. We have a question. Oh, you have a question first. Yeah,
What
go.
did God will say Havaya from the inside
What do you mean?
Inside
What did he say? What?
Havaya, sorry.
You want to repeat the question?
Would he use God's name?
No, he would say what's Yom Kippur?
What do you mean?
And everybody would just fall flat on their face.
No. First of all, he said it multiple times. We're talking about the Tetragrammaton. Normally, Jews do not pronounce the Tetragrammaton as it is written, because we believe it's such a holy name that it could only be pronounced in the Holy Temple, and it was pronounced in the Holy Temple every single day, not just on Yom Kippur. Yes, the Kohanim, when they used to bless the Jews in the temple, they used to use the actual word, the pronunciation of the Tetragrammaton, which we don't do it. Correct. Yeah. All right. Now, what's the question we ask? What is the moral priority of the day? It's a good question. The moral priority. First of all, I think that it depends on who you are. I don't think everybody has the same moral priority. Right? His moral priority might be different than your moral priority. I think your moral priority is to understand who you are, where you are, and today do something that will make the biggest difference in the world. Yeah. And that might actually be sharing this video, by the way. Just plugging myself a little bit. Okay. I need somebody to help me read. You want to help me read this or no? No, you don't want. Okay, so then go learn in the room. Okay. We have Rabbi. I have heard that God is also referred to in a plural form, not necessarily Trinitarian. First of all, correct. There is ancient Hebrew words for God that are in the plural. Okay? Never in a more than, plural means two or more. Okay? We never have God mentioned in a terminology of 3 or 4 or 5. We do have plural, which, for example, Elohim, right? Now, Kabbalistically, it's explained because there are different manifestations of godliness. There's the manifestation of godliness, the highest manifestation of godliness is a complete unified reality, and therefore it's a singular. However, when God comes into this world and he is this operator of this plural reality, therefore he's called plurally because he's in the plural reality. Because he's in the plural reality, operating in a plural reality, we call him with a plural name. When he's beyond that reality, when we're talking about God that is beyond the plural reality, we call him with a singular name because he's singular. right? And I don't want to get too much into it, but it's very Kabbalistic, is that each time we use God's name, there's actually 7 different ways we refer to God in the Bible, but each time we're actually referring to a particular manifestation of godliness. That's the same one God that manifests in different ways. In other words, we see it differently. Not that God is different, but we see God differently, right? When we see God punishing, he looks mean. When we see God blessing us and giving us abundance, we see him as kind, right? It seems like completely 2 different characters. And in each one of these characters that God presents himself to us has a different name in the Bible, all right? So that answers your question. Let's see any other questions. We have Talmudic Tom. What is this? Talmudic Tom. Did you have a question before?
Okay, so this other person,
Yeah.
Jonathan, cosmology videos.
Yeah.
Says Jung, I think that means Carl Jung.
Carl Jung, yeah.
Carl Jung said that the Tetragrammaton are the 4 essential emotions: love, joy, anger, and sadness, symbolized as Venus, Jupiter, Mars, and Saturn.
Listen, I can't really comment on Carl Jung, but I can tell you that in Kabbalistic teachings, we teach you many different meanings of the Tetragrammaton. And by the way, it could change depending on what the vowels of the Tetragrammaton are. It could also change on various different other spiritual significance. The Tetragrammaton can mean a heck of a lot of things, Kabbalistically, depending on what you're using it. Yeah? Anyone else? Any other interesting... No? No, go on. Well, move on. If anybody wants, we'll give you another 10, 20 seconds to put up a question or something. Did we miss anyone that was up there? Sometimes we do miss because it comes through at the wrong time and then we don't see it. Yeah. Anything else you think we should mention? Huh? But go to the end, see if anybody put a new one. Anybody put a new question? Yeah? No one put a new question. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming. And this class happens every day, 11 to 12 Israeli time, which I'm not sure where you are, etc. We are operating out of Tzfat, the holy city of Tzfat, which is a great place in the north of Israel. And we're very happy to have you guys. We did have that new question came up, or you don't want to talk?
Yeah,
Huh?
Rabbi, would you say Islam is closer to Judaism than Christianity? Would it be permissible for Jew to enter a mosque or a Christian church?
So that's actually a good question, Mr. The Great, whoever you are. I think that, first of all, the generally accepted rule in Judaism is that we could pray in a mosque, but we cannot pray in a church. There is an argument amongst the Jewish scholars whether or not Christianity is complete heresy or not. And part of this has a lot to do with the fact that it seems like some of them believe that there are godly powers outside of the central one almighty God. We call almighty God for a reason. Judaism believes that there's one reality that controls everything and nothing compares to it in any way, shape, or form. And that one infinite reality is connecting with everything in the world. That's what we believe. And it's very similar to Islam. So the truth is that the belief in God itself in Islam is much more similar to the belief in God in Judaism than Christianity. However, if you ask how they're observed, that would really depend. How you actually observe the laws of God. It could be that some Christians may observe those laws better than certain Muslims, and by the way, I think it goes both ways. You could have certain Muslims maybe follow those laws better than the other. I think, for example, we find in a lot of Islamic countries there's a lot of very horrible problems. First of all, murder is very rampant in many Muslim countries. Forget about terrorism. Forget about Islamic terrorism. They're very violent people. Here in Israel, there's a lot of Israeli Arabs, and they're killing each other all the time. They have gangs and family wars. I mean, so how could you say you're following God's laws when you're killing each other all the time? To me, I find that very hard to believe. Even though if you ask a Muslim, define God, it could be much more similar to Judaism than others. How they observe it is really where a lot of that does change, etc. Anything else? Any other questions? Anybody that just arrived, you have about another 5-10 seconds to make a question. You just put it in the comment. If it's a good question, we'll deal with it. If not, we're going to move on and close this thing. Okay? 10. I'm going to give a countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.